Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Canada once again and we're going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So both of the breweries involved in this one have featured on the channel before, albeit the home brewery has featured quite a few times, whereas the away brewery has featured only once thus far. But both are relatively new additions to their respective local beer scenes, but they've built up very, very good reputations for themselves. If people were to ask me about the home brewery, I would say that they're best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but they apparently have some very good sour beers as well. Still need to try those. Whereas the away brewery seem to be really quite well rounded. From what I saw, they do a lot of different beer styles, and I still need to explore them a little bit on the channel going forward. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of the home brewery's latest releases here in Hong Kong. It's a style that I know both breweries can do very, very well, and it's a style that is really quite popular at the moment. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, for the home side of things, we're going to go over to Canada, like I said. We're going to go to the province of Quebec, the city of Montreal, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Messorem Bractorium. So this particular beer is called Melodic Whimper. It comes in at 7.8% ABV, and this one is another New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. But this one has been brewed in collaboration with Willibald, who sometimes are known as Willibald Farm Brewery, and also sometimes known as Willibald Distillery and Brewery, from what I understand. So need to check out the exact name of these guys, but they are from over the border in Ontario, just out to the east of a little place called Ayr. But yeah, both very, very good breweries from what I've seen thus far. And this is a style that I know both breweries can do very, very well. So let's crack on then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. This is yet another one that I picked up from Angry Beer in Mongkok and Kowloon here in Hong Kong. They've always got a nice selection of American and Canadian and Australian beers and stuff like this. Some good old school Belgian things too. So I'll put the link to their Facebook page in the video description for you below, and their Instagram, and you can keep an eye on what they've got in. But very nice little shop. Do make sure you go and check it out. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about both breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Messorem Bractorium and from Willibald Farm Brewery, and we will no doubt add more to both of those lists at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel, like I said. Failing that as well, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Canadian playlist, along with a number of other things that's being added to quite regularly, of course, because we do get a good selection of Canadian beers in Hong Kong, which I'm very happy about. Long may it continue. And do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. And do check out some of my Canadian beer tubing colleagues as well. Lee Russell is, of course, one of the OG original generation beer tubers, and then you've got the newer guys like Redbeard Off the 10th and things, who are doing a lot of really interesting videos too. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Messorem Bractorium first, since they are the home brewery in this case. So yeah, Messorem, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Montreal and Quebec, and the three men who started this project are Marc-André Fillon, Sébastien Chaput and Vincent Menard, and these guys all met in the underground music scene in Montreal back in the early 2000s. So Sébastien is a guitarist and plays for the metal band Iron Dissonance, who've played all over the world, but more recently he studied business management and finance, and he takes care of the business side of the company. Vincent, on the other hand, was a drummer for another metal band called Last Felony, but he was also an avid home brewer for years before he went on to study brewing formally, and then he interned at Oval Brewing and Pit Caribou before going on to work for Les Trois Mousquetaires, the Three Musketeers in English, for 2 years, but he now takes care of the brewing side of the business. Marc-Andre was the singer of Orphans in Coma and Here Comes the Hurricane, but more recently he's been rapping with La Carabine, but he studied design and marketing before working in the field professionally, and he's the man behind the branding and the artwork of Messorem, which is of course very distinctive. But back in 2015 they would meet every Friday in a group of friends to do beer tastings and try rare beers from across the world, but this really got them wondering about how they could satisfy their desire for, you know, the big bold beers without having to bring back only very small amounts from different countries. And it was this that kind of spurred them onto the idea of talking about founding their own microbrewery. So Marc-Andre's father Christian was really impressed by the group's tenacity at trying to get this project off the ground, and so he spoke to his friend Francois Garot, who helped the company find their current location by Lachine Canal on Pitt Street. So Christian had actually worked in pharma while Francois had been a professor of mathematics and worked in real estate on the side, and the two men joined the company in the early stages of its establishment. But the name Messorem Bractorium is taken from Latin. I'm probably pronouncing it horribly, of course, but it translates into English as the Brewery of the Reaper, and the brewery opened its doors to the public in August of 2019, and they have a tap room on site with a terrace and capacity for 250 people, and they collaborate with Mitch Daly, who run the kitchen, and they serve all sorts of dishes, so they've got quite a big rotating menu there from what I understand. But over the years the brewery have become really well known for their IPAs, the New England Hazy variety of course, but they are trying other things now, and also for their kind of more modern, fruity, juicy sour beers. But as of September 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 600 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But these guys are one of the best known craft breweries from Canada these days, or one of the most hyped Canadian breweries, I guess we could say. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Messorem Bractorium for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on to the Ontario side of this beer then. So, Willibald Farm Brewery, or Willibald Distillery and Brewery as they're also known, are based just to the east of Ayr in Ontario, which you'll find west of Hamilton, east of London and south of Kitchener. It's kind of in that, could we say, the kind of southeastern corner, if you like, of Ontario. It's a very big province, of course, though. But this company was founded back in 2017 by Cameron Formica, along with brothers Jordan and Nolan van der Heyden. So they started the company just after they finished university, and their first project was actually the distillery. But apparently they went down to the US to study distilling, and then they got their Ontario license and ordered a 1,000 litre hybrid pot from Germany. So they'd apparently thought about starting the brewery first, but their love of whiskey really pushed them down to focusing on the distillery route first, and they also felt that it was a bit more of a novelty because there weren't many distilleries operating at that time in the province of Ontario. But they researched properly for a properly licensed property in Kitchener and Waterloo, but they really struggled with this, and so Willibald can be found on the Van der Heyden family farm, and the brewery and distillery is based in an old dairy barn. But they started off producing gin, and then they soon added whiskey to their repertoire, and they produced much of the grain used in the spirits on site as well, which is pretty cool. But the name of the company is taken from the middle name of one of the Van der Heyden's grandfathers. But in 2018 they added a restaurant which focused on local produce, and then in 2019 they opened the brewery. So yeah, the brewery part of this business was only founded about 5 years ago. But the current head brewer is Joseph Freund, who is originally from the US, and he studied on the master brewing program with the Siebel Institute, who, if I remember correctly, are based in Chicago. But he then worked for Jolly Pumpkin, Beavertown in London in England, Monkish over in California, and then Ale Farm in Denmark before he joined Willibald just as they started up the brewery in 2019. But over the years they've continued to develop new recipes and expand the capacity of the brewery and distillery, and as I said, their reputation has been growing and growing over the last few years too. But as of September 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 165 different beers according to Untappd, and they are another of the really up-and-coming Canadian breweries at the moment. But that is everything I can really tell you about Willibald Farm Brewery or Willibald Distillery and Brewery, however you want to refer to them. A really interesting company and another one that I really would like to go and visit at some stage. There's lots of places in Canada I think I do need to go and check out. But if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So once again, this is a 473 milliliter can, 1 American pint. You can see the artwork on this one is kind of pretty nice, Melodic Whimper. I think the name of that's quite nice. You've just got the mouth open there with something like that. But yeah, you can see on the back there is the Messorem Bractorium Reaper, and there is the Willibald symbol. Plain silver top on the can there, as I mentioned. One of the other Messorem symbols you will very often see is this one, if the camera's going to focus on it. There you go. But yeah, like we said, this one comes in at 7.8% ABV. It's hopped with Simcoe, Cashmere and Nectaron. We know all of these hops quite well. Simcoe is an American hop. Comes in at about 12% alpha acid, and in a New England IPA it's going to give you a lot of nice kind of soft juicy passion fruit. Cashmere is quite an interesting one, about 14 or 15% alpha acid if I remember correctly, and it gives you quite a powerful melon actually. Cashmere is a hop you do have to be quite careful with because it can dominate beers, but yeah, for me melon, lemon and lime usually is what you'll get out of Cashmere. And then Nectaron is a New Zealand hop, and that's going to give you about I think it's about 11 or 12% alpha acid again, but it's a kind of more pineapple-y character that you get out of that. So yeah, this should be really interesting. But like I said, 7.8% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. I'm really curious about this one. Yes, so let's do this. There we go. Interesting colour on this one. So we've poured maybe about 80% of the beer out and into the glass at this point. So before the head disappears, you can see that the beer's poured with about a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. Some small bubbles on the surface of the liquid there. And you can see I'm not sure where you can see that. I think the light's not too great actually, but yeah, you can see that it gets a little bit foamier but slightly more soapy at the same time the further up the head that you go. But yeah, the colour of this one's really interesting. This is one of the paler New Englands that I've come across over the last little while, so I would describe this one as being a bit more akin to like a pineapple or a peach juice colour or something like that. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, but you don't often have to care about that when it comes to the different kinds of IPA, of course. But yeah, the level of haze in this one actually, for it being a 7.8%er, it's actually quite impressive. And the level of haze in New England IPAs, of course, depends mostly on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use in your beers. And that can vary from brewery to brewery and beer to beer, right enough. But not much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer. It does look pretty nice actually. So nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. It is just one of the paler examples of this New England IPA style that I've seen in recent times. You can see the head has dropped away a little bit on this one to leave a kind of thinner, more foamy layer there, but you've got that nice kind of thicker ring just around the edge of the glass too. But all in all, that's everything we need to say about the appearance. Let's go on and have a little look at the aroma of this beer then, because I'm very, very curious about this. Ooh, that smells really nice. It has got a little bit more pungency to it as well, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, kind of gives you everything you'd want from the New England IPA. You've got the lovely kind of juicy fruits out of it, but as I say, it's a wee bit more citrusy and pungent leaning, this one. You've got a good kind of malty, bready character coming out of it. Nice little touch of sweetness, of course. And then you've got that nice bright green component. So these are all things that you would expect of the New England IPA. But as I've said in many videos before, for me, when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of these beers, there are 6 elements that you should think about. So there's the kind of farmhousey, yeasty type character and the rye lean and grainy side of things. Those 2 elements are a bit more prominent in the New England brewed New England IPAs, because this beer really started off as like a farmhouse type IPA. But since then, the kind of style has evolved a little bit more to focus on more kind of like wheaty, bitey notes, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and there's also the sweeter elements there too. So with this beer, for me, it does have a little bit of that kind of farmhousey, yeasty note to it, and I think that's the Messorem influence in there. But at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if Willibald has a little bit of that, because it is actually a farm brewery. But yeah, I get quite a little bit of wheaty character out of this one, good little bit of barley malt in there, and some nice oaty notes as well. So it's quite a well balanced New England IPA in terms of its malty side of things. But all in all, the way it goes together is really nice in that regard. But I'm getting more wheat out of the aroma at the start, I have to say. So yeah, let's just break that aroma down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So for me, the backbone of this beer, you've got that lovely fresh white bready bread crust coming out of this one. So yeah, lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. Definitely a little bit of woodiness and a little bit of cracker, which you will very, very often find in this particular beer style. So there's a little bit of that going on. But yeah, lots of fluffy, fresh white bread coming out of this one. I don't even really get much in the way of like brown bread out of it either. So yeah, there's a little touch of brown bread in there. Wee bit of like white bread as well, but yeah, mostly fluffy white bread. And you can smell the density of the wheat in this beer as well. There's a little bit of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose, but really it's quite smooth, in honesty. And that's one thing you have to remember, is that oats and wheat can vary a little bit depending on where they're from. European oats are a little bit more creamy. North American oats have a wee bit more of a kind of porridgey note to them. European wheat's a little bit more bitey. North American wheat's a bit smoother. So the wheaty elements that you get out of this beer, for me, there is a little bit of bitiness at the back of the nose, but generally speaking, it is a lot smoother, I would say. But yeah, on top of that, you definitely get a little bit of oaty character out of the beer. And the oats are interesting because they do have a degree of creaminess to them, but they're starting to show a little bit of the kind of drier character. And usually when it comes to oats, the creamier the oats smell and taste, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older the beer is. You know, it can be a very rough measure of how fresh your New England IPA is. But yeah, I'm getting a mix of slightly drier character and creamier notes out of this one. There's a wee bit of like a kind of Skittles type character mixed in with the oats as well. That can come from certain yeasts. But on that malty side of things, there's a little touch of Werther's Original Butter Candy Butterscotch coming out of the beer as well. But yeah, if you sugar it up, you do start to get those kind of sweeter elements out of it for sure. The yeasty side of this beer for me, more kind of white bready, I would say, a little bit crackery, a little bit more sort of woody and things. But yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, the malty and yeasty side of this beer, I think, is really quite interesting. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really nice. But the more that I smell of it, the more it kind of mellows out and smoothens up a wee bit. The other thing I would say about this beer, if we move on to the green component, the green component actually gets smoother as well the more that you smell of this beer. So remember, when you're hopping IPAs, there are 3 different types of hoppings you can do. Early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil, that's going to give you mainly bitterness and a deeper, danker kind of green component in terms of flavour and aroma. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil. A little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma, and that's going to give you a brighter green component. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma, and again, it's going to give you a brighter green component. New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, which is why they're softer and more kind of juicy almost, whereas West Coast IPAs, they use all 3 types of hopping, which is why they have that deeper, danker type quality to them and that more oily, fruity note. But yeah, the way that all of that kind of goes together in this one is also quite nice. So the green component for me isn't overly pungent. I would actually have guessed there was a little bit of cryo or incognito or something going on with this one, because the green component is very, very smooth. But there's a teeny little bit of earthiness in there and a wee bit of woody and herbal note, but again, that's very, very minimal. But the green component is mostly quite floral and quite oily and quite bright, and then you've got that nice kind of grassy sort of zestiness coming out of this one too. But yeah, the green component is quite oily and quite smooth, generally speaking. Not much else to say about it other than that, to be honest. So let's round off the aroma then with a wee look at the fruity side of things. And the fruity side of this beer is actually quite oily as well. This aroma of this beer is quite interesting because it is really quite creamy in the malt base, but then yeah, the fruity and green component is really oily, to be honest with you. But yeah, interesting stuff. So on the on the fruity side of things, quite a few things going on here. So for me, I get quite a lot of melon out of this one, and as I say, cashmere, you have to be quite careful with it because it can dominate beers. So yeah, for me, the melon is very, very pungent. It might just be me. Everyone has a different perception. You know, beer is always relative. We should point this out. But yeah, I've always found cashmere for me is a very pungent hop, so I get a lot of melon out of this one. I'm getting quite a lot of the juicy passion fruit though from the Simcoe, but yeah, the melon is the backbone of the beer for me. So the cashmere really is kind of sticking out of this one for me. But yeah, you've got a really nice, I would say, yeah, there's a really nice like pineapple-y note out of this one. And I want to say there's a bit of juicy mango there. Nectaron can give you that little bit of mango as well. So I'm getting, yeah, passion fruit, mango, pineapple, and then a lot of melon, of course. But then, yeah, some really nice lemon, lime, and yeah, kind of limey and lemony notes out of it. I think it's really interesting how all of that sort of pieces together, actually. So yeah, some really interesting stuff going on in the fruity side of things with this beer, but it really leans, I think the pungency of the melon and the lemon lime, the cashmere I think is always just one of the really pungent hops in terms of flavour and aroma, and that really kind of shows in this beer. But I think we've said everything we really need to about the aroma of this one, but as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy that before you actually get stuck into the beer. But we should taste this one now and see what it's all about. So yeah, definitely a more citrusy leaning New England IPA, this for sure. But yeah, this is the Melodic Whimper, a 7.8% New England Hazy Imperial, or whatever you want to call it, IPA from Messorem Bractorium in Montreal, Quebec, in collaboration with Willibald Brewery from Ayr in Ontario, both in Canada. Let's get stuck into this. Slange, skål, cheers, santé. That's really nice. It's got a really nice smoothness to it, this one. The aroma was really making me think that this would be quite an oily New England IPA, but it's actually one of the thicker and more creamy ones that I can say that I've had. Messorem beers are always, in my experience, they've always got this nice smoothness to them, but they're a little bit drier and more bready into the aftertaste. But this one certainly has a little bit more kind of oaty creaminess, in my opinion. And I think the wheat is doing a lot to kind of thicken the thing up as well. But yeah, a really nice New England double. So credit to both breweries involved in this one, I have to say. Yeah, I like this. Big thumbs up. Melodic Whimper is definitely worth checking out. But yeah, it gives you everything you want. Lovely big kind of white bready character. The oats are in there, the wheat's there. Nice bright green component, and you've also got the fruity character coming out of this one as well. But yeah, really nicely balanced beer, this one. So let's do as we always do. We'll break the flavour down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. We'll start on the middle third of the palate as always. That is good. That is nice. So, the middle third of your palate then, the backbone of the beer is that fresh white bready bread crust, the hedgehog roll type thing. As you move further forward, you get that nice little bit of woodiness coming out of the beer. And then on top of that, you've got that nice crackery sort of note, which I think is great. So yeah, you've got that, you know, fresh white bready bread crust and there, a little bit of woody note to it, and then yeah, you've got that crackery layer sitting on top of it. But yeah, with this one, I'm trying to figure out if there is a slight brown bready character to it. There's maybe just a little smattering of like a kind of brown bready layer sitting on top of the crackery notes. But then yeah, you've got that fluffier white bready layer there from the barley malt sitting on top of that. The bready character in this one is really, really nice. But then above that, you get the wheaty side of the beer, and the wheat of course is going to give you that more dense white bready character there. So further forward on that middle third of your palate, it's actually quite smooth, but then yeah, further back it's a little bit more kind of bitey. So remember, sweeter flavours tend to come out further forward on your palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out a little bit further back. So you can really feel that with the wheat in this one, smoother at the front and then a bit more bitey going back. But on top of the wheat, of course, you start to get the oaty side of the beer. So let's have a little look at the oats. So yeah, the oaty side of this one for me is quite interesting because this beer is really quite creamy in comparison to some of the Messorems that I've had before. But I remember the Willibald ones were a little bit more wheaty leaning too, and the wheat I think comes to the fore a little bit more into the aftertaste. But yeah, if you go down the middle line of your tongue, you can really feel the oaty creaminess, and then it just dries out a little bit. As you move out toward the edges of the palate there. But in the dead centre of your tongue, you get a little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type note coming out of the beer too. And then there's maybe just a little sprinkling of like McVitie's digestive biscuit in the middle of your palate as well. So these are all things that you kind of expect from this style, but I think the wheat has a little bit more pungency in this one, and the creamy oatiness comes out of it that little bit more too. So it's a really interesting mix of things going on in this particular beer. But yeah, all in all, really nice. Yeah, really, really nice New England IPA, this one for sure. But the middle of the palate, it's interesting. It has a little bit of that skittly flavour to it as well that you get from one of the yeast, but I think it can also be from a little bit of brew sugar as well. But yeah, I think we said everything we need about the middle third of the palate. So let's go to the back third of your palate. And as I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel a wee touch of brown bread in the base, fluffier white bread in the middle, and the more wheaty, bitey white bread on top. But the base of that back third of your palate is the Jacob's cream cracker. The bread crust, then the Jacob's cream cracker, then you've got a wee bit of the brown bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. Then above that you've got the white bready layer, which again feels a little bit lighter, taller, more airy, a wee bit drier too. Then the wheaty character just creeps over the top of that and gives you that little bit of wheaty bitiness in there, and maybe a little touch of the biscuity character in this one creeps over the top of that too. And then it's all about the yeasty side of things, and I will say that this beer shows you a little bit more of that yeasty character into the aftertaste too. So let's just focus on that a little bit. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer for me, at its core, you get a really nice, slightly sweeter brown bread out of this one. And then as you move out from the core of that yeasty character, it's a little bit more like a kind of sweet white bread, and then it's the edge of it is more of a kind of, it's more a sort of crackery and bread crusty type note. So yeah, the yeasty character actually adds a little bit of sweetness in there, almost has a wee bit of that skittly type flavour too, but definitely, yeah, back third of your palate the flavour is taller, then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate it kind of condenses down and squashes together a little bit more. So yeah, the way that that goes together is really nice too. On the on the hoppy side of things then, let's move on to the green component. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there, and as you move further forward, it's a little touch more woody and herbal and stuff like that. But then, yeah, very quickly, it shows you a little touch of kind of, there's a little bit of pine resin underneath that, but yeah, as you move further forward, it becomes really floral and aromatic and very slightly spicy as you reach the front corners of the palate. But round the front curve of the tongue, it's definitely lighter and more grassy, and it shows you a wee bit of kind of zestiness, I would say. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the green component. So let's round off the tasting section with a wee look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that bready build up in there. Wee bit of brown bread in the base, the white bread taking up the most of it, then the wheaty bitiness on top, and the base of that front third of your palate, again, fresh white bready bread crust, little bit of Jacob's cream cracker, the brown bread, the white bread, and then the wheat and a bit of the creamier oats. And then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, let's focus on the fruity side of things now. So, for me, fruity side of things is really nice. At the back of that front third of your palate, I think, yeah, it's a lot of melon. You know, the cashmere for me has just always been a really dominant hop. I'm getting a lot of melon out of this one. And then sitting on top of it, you get a wee bit of the juicier passion fruit and mango from the Simcoe. I think the Nectaron is going to contribute to that in a way as well. But yeah, I'm getting a lot of pineapple. As you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, you can feel the melons underneath, and then yeah, you have like passion fruit, mango, pineapple, and then as you go further forward from that, it's all about you know, as you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, you start to get the more kind of lemony, limey characteristics of the cashmere. So yeah, for me, the melon comes forward, and then yeah, it's juicy lime, and then a bit of a more sharper lemony character as you reach the kind of front tip of the tongue, and that's where you get the mix between the grassy esters and the other things. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really, really nice in this one. But yeah, I do really like how this beer goes about its business. It gets a big thumbs up from me. You do get, I will say as well, about the fruity side of things, you get more of that tropical fruity side of it into the aftertaste. It almost shows you a little bit of like an apricot-y, papaya type character into the aftertaste, and the pineapple as well. So yeah, more melon in the beginning and the lemon limey character, but then yeah, the tropical notes I think start to dominate a little bit more into the aftertaste too. And yeah, the oaty smoothness, the oaty creaminess coming out of this beer also comes to the fore with this beer as well. But yeah, the way that all of this goes together is really nice. A very, very solid New England double IPA in my opinion, and quite different to the other ones I've had from Messorem before. Only my second one I've had, right enough, from Willibald Brewing. But let's round off this review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, I would say top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation has a wee bit of a prickle to it, but actually it's quite smooth. Like I said, this one, for a 7.8%er, it is one of the thicker and more creamy New England IPAs that I've had. In terms of the IBUs of this beer, I think it's maybe 30 or 40 IBUs, something like that, which is kind of standard for the New England and the double variant of the New England. But the malt base, as we said, a little bit drier underneath, smooth in the middle, and then a wee bit of creaminess and sweetness on top. And then, yeah, you have that nice, kind of hoppiness, the bitterness lingering into the aftertaste, balanced out by it. You get a bit more sweetness out of the malt base into the aftertaste. The yeastiness adds a little bit of this to the sweetness and gives you a wee bit of dryness too. And then, yeah, you've got that really nice, juicy, fruity character coming out of the beer as well. But overall, it's a really, really nice New England double IPA, this one. And I'm glad I got the chance to try this. Definitely cool to see two of the top breweries in Canada at the moment collaborating a little bit. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Melodic Whimper, a 7.8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Simcoe, Cashmere and Nectar on this one. An interesting hop lineup that I've not had together before. I've not had Cashmere in quite a wee while, come to think of it. But this one comes to you from Messorem Bractorium in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, in collaboration with Willibald Brewery, who are from over the provincial line in Ayr in Ontario. But yeah, really good beer, this one, and I highly recommend you check out if you get the chance. A big oaty, creamy, smooth and more citrusy leaning New England double IPA for me. So yeah, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are, both from Messorem Bractorium and from Willibald Farm Brewery, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the near future. Until the next time, check out my social media, check out the brewery social media, and I'll see you guys later. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.